I'm sitting here with Richard Brookhiser, the author of John Marshall, The Man Who Made the Supreme Court. And I'd like to ask you, how did George Washington shape John Marshall's life?
Well, John Marshall volunteered for the Virginia militia when he was 19 in 1775, very beginning of the Revolution. And then in the following year, he enlisted in the Continental Army. So that brings him under the command of George Washington. And he will fight in 3 battles where Washington commands on the field: Brandywine, Germantown in 1777, Monmouth in 78, and between Germantown and Monmouth, he's at Valley Forge, also with George Washington. So he's seeing him in defeat, he's seeing him in victory, and he's seeing him at Valley Forge. And his conclusion from these experiences is that Washington was the rock on which the revolution rested. And this impressed him with an example of firmness, fortitude, striking when you can, not striking when you shouldn't, and it just never left him.
When John Marshall is coming onto the Supreme Court, he already knows that he wants to write about George Washington. Tell me about what he produces.
Well, he and Bushrod Washington, who's one of George's nephews and who inherits Mount Vernon, they engaged to write a biography of George Washington. Bushrod Washington has bad eyesight, so he drops out as a writer, but he owns all of Washington's papers. They were left to him in Washington's will. So Marshall uses that source, plus his own recollections, and also his correspondence with people like Lafayette and Daniel Morgan, who sent him details, and also his own involvement in the politics of the 1790s, in which he was very involved and on Washington's side. And he thinks he's going to produce a 4 or 5 volume biography in 1 year. That's just very unrealistic. It takes him several years to do this. But the net result is that he and Bushrod each made about $19,000, which was a pretty good sum of money for that day. And interestingly, one of the salesmen who's selling subscriptions for Marshall's biography is Mason Locke Weems, who would be producing another biography of his own, shorter and more effective in the popular mind.
That's remarkable. When John Marshall is on the Supreme Court, he winds up serving as Chief Justice, I believe, for longer than anyone.
34 years.
In its history.
Still a record.
When you look at his tenure as Chief Justice, what stands out to you? What sort of legacy does he leave behind?
One thing that's related to Washington is that he's the last Federalist left standing. Now, Washington dies in 1799. Hamilton is killed in 1804. The Federalist Party ends with the War of 1812. But Marshall marches on until Andrew Jackson's second term. So he, in his rulings, he very often reflects Federalist ideas about what the Constitution meant and how it should work. He very much believes that the Constitution is a document produced by the people, not a compact among the states. He believes that it is constitutional to have a Bank of the United States. This was a big issue in Washington's term, and it comes up again when the second Bank of the United States is in existence. And Marshall settles that question finally in McCulloch versus Maryland. He also takes a very Federalist view of the supremacy of the federal judiciary over state courts. Hamilton had written in the Federalist Papers that 13 courts of final jurisdiction would be a hydra in government. And that's the monster of many heads, and if you cut one off, 2 more would sprout out. So the alternative to that is to have federal supremacy over decisions that state courts make. And these are all decisions that Marshall, over the years, renders in one form or